So our notes today, the title is going to be Parallel Lines Cut by a Transversal. And today is the 9th. So we're going to define a couple things because there's some words that we might not know in that title. So first we're going to define parallel lines. So parallel lines, hold on, I'm going to make it so you can see it better. All right, so parallel lines, they are two lines that are always the same distance apart. Therefore, they never touch. So, sorry, I really don't like how it's not letting me see. So they are two lines that are always the same distance apart and they never touch. Those are parallel lines. So the word that's probably super new is transversal. And what a transversal line is, it is a line that crosses two other lines. So, for example, say I have, and I would make this big because we're going to keep going back to this picture. Say we have a set of parallel lines and it's cut by this line here. So this line is a transversal, the line that cuts it across. So these are the words that we're going to need to know to be able to work with our vocabulary today. So what I'm going to do to make our vocabulary a little bit easier to understand is I'm going to put numbers on all of the angles. Therefore, we know exactly which angle I'm talking about when I'm talking about a certain angle. So I just labeled them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm also changing my marker because you can't see the gray. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a word that we already know, which is vertical angles. And I always like to write vertical angles like that because they're literally vertical angles. So again, we already know this. They're congruent angles located opposite each other. So they're on opposite sides. So if I was going to look at this transversal that's cutting the two parallel lines, I'm going to try to find some congruent angles. So if I look at, for example, these colors aren't working right for me. If we had angle 1, it is a vertical angle with angle 4 because they're right across from each other. They're pointing at each other. Another example could be angle 7 and angle 6. There's so many more examples you could write. So I want you to choose one more example of vertical angles you see here and write it down. All right, so those are vertical angles. We've been working with those. Another type of angle that we've been working with are supplementary angles. And supplementary angles, as we know, are angles that add up to 180 degrees. We can also sometimes we think about linear pairs, because linear pairs, they are supplementary, but supplementary angles aren't always linear pairs. So let's look back at all these numbers here, and let's find some examples. So I'm going to start off with angle 1 again. If I had angle 1, I could make 2 different supplementary angles with it. I have angle 1 and angle 2. That makes a line, so that would add up to 180. And then I also have angle 1 and angle 3. Those ones are also supplementary. We can even do the same stuff with angle 5 and 6, or angle 5 and 7. So what I want you to do now is write what is another pair of supplementary angles you see. All right. These are where the new vocab words come in. So those 2 vocab words we've been working with, the next 4 ones are new. So we're going to start with corresponding angles. And what corresponding angles are congruent angles in matching corners. And what I mean by matching corners is that if I was to look, so I'm going to underline this in blue because I'm going to put some corresponding angles in blue. So if I was to look at angle 3, I want to see a corner that looks exactly like angle 3. So if I keep going down the transversal, this angle right here, angle 7, is corresponding. They have matching corners, so they're corresponding to each other. So I'm going to write that down. Here we have angle 3 and angle 7. Another set, say we're looking at angle 4, we slide down the transversal, we see that it matches with angle 8. So angle 4 and angle 8 are also corresponding. So I want you to, and remember, they're congruent, so they are equal in measure. So I want you to write what is another pair of corresponding angles you see. All right, our next word. Alternate interior angles. So alternate interior angles, sorry, the focus is bothering me right now. There we go. So the alternate interior angles, they're also congruent. So they're congruent angles at alternate, which means opposite, alternate sides of the transversal. So that's where the alternate comes up on, but they're also, and they're inside the parallel lines. So what I mean by inside the parallel lines, I'm going to take out my gray marker again because it's whatever. So if I was to connect the parallel lines and make it into a box, so I'm going to do these alternate interior in pink. Not this pink, because this pink is dead. So alternate interior angles. So I go inside of my box, so I only have angles 3, 4, 5, and 6. So say I wanted to start with angle 4. The first thing I need to do is go to the opposite side of my transversal. So I go to the opposite side of my transversal. And inside the parallel lines, so it's going to be angle 5. So they're on opposite sides of that transversal, and they're inside those parallel lines. So our example here is angle 4 and angle 5. See if you can find that second set of alternate interior angles and write them down now. Our next definition, I know it's a lot of vocab, is alternate exterior angles. So it's the same definition as above. So they're congruent angles at alternate sides of the transversal, but the difference here is the exterior. So it's and outside the parallel lines. So outside. So I'm going to do this one in red. So let's say, so outside means I can work with angles 1, 2, 7, and 8. So I'm going to start with angle 1. And so I go to the other side and the opposite side of my transversal. So it'd be angle 8. So angles 1 and angles 8 are alternating and they're exterior. So they're alternate exterior angles. Can you name the second pair of alternate exterior angles? All right, I know this is a lot of vocab and a lot of stuff to process, but we have one more vocab word. And this is going to be consecutive angles. So up to now, we've just been working with a bunch of angles that are congruent to each other. Executive is different. Executive, they're angles on one side of the transversal that add up to 180 degrees. You can also sometimes hear consecutive angles called same side angles because they're on one side or the same side of that transversal. So I'm going to do these ones in orange. So consecutive. So they have to add up to 180 degrees. So if I look at 6, I have to look at the same side. I know 6 and 8 are supplementary because they make that line. But they're not consecutive because they are, because you want to use the other cut by the transversal. So 6 and 4 would be those consecutive angles. So you're going to find them on the inside of that box that we made. So our example is angle 6 and angle 4. So see if you can find that last set of consecutive angles. So I know that was a lot of vocab, and there's a lot of different numbers and stuff, and it's very theoretical right now, but we're going to be adding some math to it a little bit later, so don't worry about that part at all. So I hope you have a super good day. We're going to be doing some practice with that. And yes, I can never end this because I always press the wrong things. Come on. There we go.